Hello again, everyone. I'm Chris Vainella, and welcome back to another episode of The Movie Year That Was, a movie year review show where up until now, we've always talked about all of the most notable movies that happened in the same calendar year. And while we're still going to do that, I decided that since this is a new beginning of a new season, well, towards the beginning of our third season of this show, and we're going to kind of change the focus of The Movie Year That Was to kind of make it fit more with the title of the podcast. And instead of just talking about all of the most notable movies that came out in this year, like I said, although we will still kind of touch on that, we're going to try to change the focus to center around the quality of the entire year of movies. So that's what we're going to be doing from now on. We're going to be looking at really trying to put more of the concentration of this podcast on trying to evaluate how good a whole movie year is in its entirety. And the first year we're going to try to tackle that with is the movie year that was 1995. Now, the reason we're doing 1995 is because right now I'm recording this towards the end of 2025. And so all of these movies that we're going to be talking about, the movie year that was 1995 is celebrating its 30-year anniversary. So I'd like to try to get that done before the end of the calendar year. This will be the last episode of this calendar year. And then we'll move on to all the sixes. Like we'll do 1996, and we already did 86, but we'll do 2006. And I'm surprised that for the first time, actually, going to go back to the 70s and do the movie year that was 1976, which is going to be a great episode. But anyway, 1995. So let's just start by talking about, in general, the movie year that was 1995, because it's a very difficult year to try to figure out exactly how good that movie year was. I've actually, for the refocusing this podcast, I've actually picked one of the most difficult years to try to do that with, because there's so much in it, as far as there's a lot of good in it and a lot of bad in it, and my feelings about the year is kind of, that year in itself has changed over my lifetime, in the 30 years since it's happened. So it's a very difficult year to quantify. But I'm going to do my best, and I think that this podcast is really best suited to try to tackle the question exactly how good a movie year was, the movie year 1995. So let me give you a little context about my history with this year. This is obviously it's right in the middle of the 90s. Literally, you cannot get more in mid-90s than 1995, right? It's literally in the middle of the decade. So we're talking about the mid-90s era of movies. And all of these movies have been this is such an incredible time for film. I in particular think that just Hollywood had figured out a formula of just cranking out all of these movies one after the other. And even if you think some of them may be mediocre, and I think looking back, some of them might not be as prestigious as they've been built up to be, there just was something in the way they made them that made these movies feel like they were more important or bigger or more epic or more prestigious than they might have otherwise been. So in other years where, there's so many also ran kind of lighter fare films, the movies from the mid-90s all felt like they were, even if they were whatever, funny or silly, they were incredibly funny or incredibly silly, to the point where we fostered onto them, you know what I mean? We kind of built them up to be more than they were. Or maybe not. Maybe they were just all that good. But they had just figured out something. You know what I mean? They all sounded really good. They all looked very good. There was just something in the sauce in that mid-90s era where you were getting a lot of really good movies. So prime time, great time for going to the movies and being a movie fan for me and everybody in my age group. And the thing that's so interesting about 1995, at least for me in particular, like I said, I'm trying to give you a little context of my history with how I experienced this year in this era of films, is that I don't think that I became, I know I became a movie fan, a fan of serious movies in 1988. I know that was when I first saw the movie Rain Man, and that really changed how I felt about movies. I didn't just like silly, funny movies anymore. I started liking more serious, prestigious films from then on out. So that was the beginning of that. So that's not from this year. However, 94, 95, while I'm experiencing 95, I'm catching up on whatever I didn't watch in 1994, and I'm realizing how many great films there were from 94. realizing it in 1995 how great that year was, and I remember coming away from that year like thinking during 1995, wow, 1994 was probably the best movie year that I've ever experienced. And my intellectual nerd brain, because like I've said in this podcast before, and I'll continue to refer to myself as a movie nerd because that's what I am. It's not just enough to love these films. I also try to intellectualize them by trying to, group them together year to year and kind of evaluate them and really try to quantify them by giving them these rankings. And so I came away from 94 thinking, well, that's the best movie year that I've ever seen. Right? Best movie year ever, I think. Right? And like I said, I'm just coming to that conclusion in 95. So at the end of 95, I did the same thing. Right? While I'm catching up with everything I didn't catch during the year of 1995, as I'm like, whatever, I'm assessing 95 and 96. So during 96, while I'm, living through that year, I'm looking back at 1995 and catching up whatever I didn't see, and then doing the same thing and trying to put all these different movies together and really decided those were the first 2 years, 94 and 95. And it's so weird because in 94, I came away thinking it was the best movie year ever. And then in 96, when I'm evaluating 95, I come away from that thinking that 95 was the worst movie year ever. Right? How could we have gone from 94 with Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction and Shawshank Redemption and Four Weddings and a Funeral, and, right? And Clerks and Dumb and Dumber and all these other, Ace Ventura and all these other different incredible films. So now we have 1995 and all the movies that came out in its year. And I think that in real time, I didn't like the movie year that was 95 anywhere near. It was just so odd, just those 2 years being next to each other, like succeeding one another. And as much as I loved 94, I hated 95 for quite a long time. But having lived through everything I've been, through as a movie fan and just rewatched these films and kind of grown up as a critic a little bit, I evaluate things with more of a critical eye rather than just as a general audience member's eye. And I go back and I watch a lot of these films, and not only do I like them a lot more than I used to, and give a lot more credit for 1995 for being a very good movie year. Hopefully by the end of this, I'll be able to decide exactly how good a movie year I think it is. But yes, I do think this movie year is very good. I went from thinking it was the worst to not so bad to good, and now I'm at the point where I think this might actually be a very good movie year. I don't think it scores. I'll get into its Rotten Tomato scores of how good critics think this year is. I don't think it's even on the top half of the ones that I've evaluated so far in this podcast. However, I think my feeling personally is that it has a much higher score than it did when I experienced it in real time. And not only that, I also understand now why I reacted to it so negatively in real time. Why right after the year was over and I was going back and looking at the year of 95 and in its entirety, why I didn't care for it so much. Why I thought it was so much worse than 94. And the reason for that is, I think the main reason for that is a lot of these movies don't really have happy endings. A lot of the big movies, a lot of the things that I saw from this year, they didn't really have a lot of very happy, satisfying endings to them. And even the ones that have kind of a satisfying ending, it's not really a happy ending. So I was still early in my viewing movies like a critic would. You know what I mean? And I didn't have the same criteria as to what made a good movie or what didn't make a good movie. So I was really evaluating these things like any other person would. And for the majority of people who watch movies, I have found in talking to people who don't really spend that much time really trying to critique a film and figuring out how good or bad it is, their general impression from any movie when they walk out of it is they know instantly whether they like it or not. And I have seen this happen a number of times. I've seen it happen to my wife probably more than anybody else, but a lot of other people too, is that even if they watch the good movie and the whole thing has been good, almost the entire 2 hours has been a good experience, and they've actually engaged and it's held their interest, and they really, really want to know what happened at the end of it. And if they were honest, or at least were knowledgeable. They would have understood they were watching something engrossing and, captivating, and therefore good, right? A very good quality. But then at the very end, if it doesn't satisfy you, if that ending doesn't leave you feeling good as to what happened at the end, you walk away saying, "Oh, I didn't like that," because it didn't leave you with that feeling of happiness or satisfaction, even sometimes not even satisfaction. Even if it is satisfying, if it doesn't have a happy ending, it really does kind of leave you with a bad taste in your mouth from what you just experienced. And so you let that cloud your judgment as to how good or bad what you just saw was. So I think that's what happened to me in real time, is that when I walked away from a lot of these movies, some of them didn't have the same happy ending that the 94 movies did, and I didn't come away from them feeling as good. I had to go back and revisit them and understand as I've grown up and kind of learned what is and isn't a good movie and for the reasons that they are good or not good. And um, a lot of them are so much better than I originally realized that they were because I rewatched them as many times as I've had. But there are so many very notable titles from the movie year that was 1995, and we're going to get into it. We're going to get into a lot of different things now, and hopefully by the end of this, I will come up with my decision as to how good or bad I think this movie really was in its entirety. And I can't even make a prediction. I shouldn't make a prediction. Let's put it that way, because I have a 50-50 chance. You know what I mean? I'm not sure about this, but going into it, I'm pretty sure that I am at least going to think that this was one of my favorite movie years. That's how far I've come. I've come from thinking it was the worst to now I think it's possible that at the end of this, I might think this is one of the best. But, who knows? Probably by the end, now having said that, it's probably going to wind up somewhere in the middle between those two things. But we're going to see what happens as we embark on how good exactly was the movie that was 1995. Okay, so as we get started, let's do a few housekeeping items first. And let's talk about how many movies there actually came out in the movie that was 1995. According to Wikipedia, there were 218 movies that came out in this year. And one thing that is absolutely true is that of all of the movie years that I've talked about in this show so far, this is the year that I have seen the most movies from. Right? I knew that eventually I would beat my record. And sure enough, it's from 1995. There were, like I said, there were 218 movies that came out this year. And of those, I saw 156 of them. The next closest year was 94, right? Which was 136. So I saw 20 more movies that came out in 95 than in 94. And the main reason for that was that all that year of 1995, I was working at a video store. One of my first jobs, and I was away at college, and they had a video store in town, and I got a job there. And so I got to see all those movies for free, right? So all through 95 and most of 96, I guess, I was watching every new thing that came out. I got to watch it for nothing. So I didn't see a lot of these movies. I didn't see as many of them in the movies theater probably as I wanted to, but I definitely saw almost everything. It was really difficult for me to try to narrow down what was and wasn't like a notable film. Okay, because I always try to make a list of like the notable films every year. But is it notable just because I saw it and I remember it, or does everybody think it's notable? See what I'm saying? It's difficult for a movie year where I saw so many of these films. It was harder for me to discern what was and what wasn't a notable, like a noteworthy film, as opposed to just like an also ran like a fluff piece, whatever. You know what I mean? Like some trivial piece of garbage. So that was very challenging in and of itself. But anyway, like I said, I saw 156 movies out of the 218 that came out in 1995. Now, 218 is not the highest total of the ones that I've seen so far, but it's definitely up there. Anything over 200 is a lot on my list so far of the movie years that I've covered on this show. I've been keeping track of the sequels lately, and There were 12 sequels that came out in 1995, and that's not a lot. It's not a little. It's right in the middle between all of the different movie years that I've talked about so far. So it's that's not like anything that really jumps out. So one thing that really jumps out is because I went through all this, and I've been doing this since I've been doing the anniversary episode. Is that I've been going through the um, Rotten Tomato scores of every single movie. I went through all 218 films, and I averaged out all of their Rotten Tomatoes scores. I've talked about this before. Rotten Tomatoes is the rating system that takes all of the different reviews from everybody into account and averages them out and gets a score. So when you go on most of your cable systems and you're looking up the information on any one particular movie, next to the movie's description will be their Rotten Tomato scores. So it is like the go-to default rating system that most people rely on to decide how good a movie is. I think it's best. The way I like to put it is, this is what the best reflection of a movie's reputation, both with critics and with audiences, is its Rotten Tomato score. So, averaging out all of the movies that came out in 1995, its total critics average is 50.62. As you can see, I'll put the list up here of all of the movie years that I've covered so far in the show, and that is pretty low. It's one of the it's not the lowest, but it's certainly not in the top half. And however, its audience score, total audience score, is 60.93, and that is the new highest. So the 1995 has a total audience score. If you average out every single movie that came out this year, it has the best total audience average amongst Rotten Tomato scores so far on this podcast. So there you go. So already it is leading in one category on one of the categories that I always keep track of on this podcast. Also of note is that its notable critics average, right? Its notable Rotten Tomatoes average amongst critics is incredibly, incredibly high. It's the second highest that I've ever done in the show. Again, that's difficult for me to quantify because just because I think it might be a notable movie doesn't think other people do. And just because I don't think it is notable doesn't mean that other people don't think it is. So maybe I'm getting that list wrong, but whatever. I use the same criteria to make the same list for all the other movie years. So I can be just as inaccurate this year as I am in other years. So if I'm inaccurate this year, I'm also inaccurate in those other years too. So I think this stat stands. That already was a huge, huge surprise for me that the critics' average among its notable films is the second highest that I've done so far in this podcast. And when we break it down, when I go through some of the movies that gave it such a great score, maybe you'll understand why it has such a high average. And its notable audience average is also the very highest. And not only is it the highest, it is the highest by a lot. Okay? It has a notable audience average amongst its Rotten Tomato scores at 67.69. And the next highest one, I'm going to look in closer, my eyes are not that great, is 1993. 1993 is in second place with 63. So it's a full 4 points higher than the next best average audience score for Rotten Tomatoes. So amongst audiences of the movie years that I've talked about, this is the most popular movie year that I've talked about in this show so far. So there we go. Already we're off to a great start that this movie year is much better than I've ever given it credit for. Even to this day, I haven't given 1995 enough credit. As I said earlier, that it has risen in my estimation, but I am still underrating it because amongst other people, amongst everybody who has rated it so far, has gone to the trouble of giving it a rating so far anyway, it has incredible Rotten Tomatoes scores. Its all-star average, like how I always make an all-star list from every year, and I'll put this movie year's all-star average up. Sorry, I will put this movie year's all-star average up as I untie my tongue. Among all the other movie years that I've talked about in this show so far, it is third highest. It is second highest. Wow. Okay. It is second highest. amongst its all-star average. So it has some really notable films. It's all the best movies, or whatever, all the movies this year is most known for, gives this year an incredible uh, average among Rotten Tomato scorers. All right, how many tickets were sold in 1995? Let's see. Let's look at its box office numbers. I will say that 1995's total box office was a $300 million increase from the year previous, 1994. And 1985 actually sold fewer. How's that possible? How did 1995? I have to edit this out, but how did 1995 make $300 million more than 1994, and yet it sold fewer tickets? It sold 12 million fewer tickets and still made $300 million more at the box office. How does that? How did that work? Was there some sort of rate hike in between 1994 and 1995? Seriously, they must have raised the price of tickets in 1995 from 1994 to the point that even though 95 had fewer tickets sold that year, it still made $300 million more at the box office. Yeah, that the only way those numbers make sense, unless the database here is inaccurate. 1995 made more money at the box office and yet sold fewer tickets. I mean, the two numbers aren't that incredibly far apart. 12 million tickets fewer in 95 were sold in 94, and yet $300 million more was made in 95 and 94. So you figure that one out. Okay, so when looking at the top 10 movies at the box office from 1995, we got number one was Die Hard with a Vengeance, two was Toy Story, three was Apollo 13, four was GoldenEye, five was Pocahontas, six was Batman Forever, seven was the movie Seven. That's not on purpose. That's just the way that worked out. That was a complete total coincidence. The seventh highest grossing film from 1995 was Seven. Seven was seventh. Casper was eight. Waterworld was nine, and 10 was Jumanji. Now, when looking at these 10, what I like to do is think to myself, well, if you had to watch all 10, how enjoyable, like if they ran that for like 24 hours, back to back to back, whatever, and you got to see all these movies in a row, would that be an enjoyable experience? How enjoyable an experience would that be compared to looking at any of the other top 10 grossing films from that year? And it's pretty good. Actually, I think it's a pretty good day worth of movies. I don't like everything on here. I wouldn't enjoy watching Casper. I've seen it. I didn't really like it that much. Waterworld is, whatever. It's flawed. It's whatever. We'll get into Waterworld later, but and even Jumanji is really good. Pocahontas is not really my favorite, but these are a good collection of 10 movies. It's not just that these were the highest grossing films. These are 10 very enjoyable films to watch. So this is really good. Like I said, every time so far, we just got started with this, but so far every time I'm looking at 95, it's so much better. I don't know how many more times. I'm gonna have to stop saying that. I'm gonna have to stop saying that 95 is better than I thought it was, because at this point, now we're looking at maybe one of the better years that I've talked about in this podcast so far. But actually, whatever. Hold your horses, Chris. All right, give it a minute, because later on in the episode we're going to talk about terrible movies from this year too, and there are a lot of them. All right, but maybe it's just sheer volume. There's so many movies from this year that there's a lot of really good ones, and yes, there are a lot of really bad ones. But at least if we're only looking at the good ones, which is how most people, like I said in the past, how most people judge a movie year, is just by looking at all the good stuff. This is really, really good, and even its top 10 list of top grossing films of the year is actually a really enjoyable list. Like I said, on the low end, you got Casper and Pocahontas and Waterworld, but all the rest of those movies are really enjoyable movies to watch. Siskel and Ebert, who are our resident movie experts, we're still doing Siskel and Ebert at the movies at this time, and their top 10 movies were, let's see, what were their favorites? Siskel and Ebert's top 10. All right, Siskel liked Crumb. That was his favorite movie of this year. Toy Story was next. Babe, Nixon, Dead Man Walking, Leaving Las Vegas, The American President, Exotica, Apollo 13 was ninth, and then the 95 version of Les Mis was his 10th favorite film of 95. Ebert's, however, was very similar, not completely identical, but his favorite film was Leaving Las Vegas. That was his favorite film of 95, followed by Crumb, then Dead Man Walking, Nixon, also, so they both have all those movies. Ebert liked Casino, which was not on Siskel's list. Then Ebert has Apollo 13, a little bit higher than Siskel does. Exotica also is on Ebert's list. A movie called My Family, which is not on Siskel's list, is on Ebert's list. A movie called Carrington, also not on Siskel's list. And the last movie called A Walk in the Clouds, which I don't really think it's a good movie at all, but whatever. They do sometimes have these weird choices for their favorite films. So those were their top 10 movies. Crumb is the one that I'm going to, by the time I get to it, I will have watched it. The time, as I'm recording this right now, I have not seen Crumb, or at least if I did see it, I don't remember it. So I'm going to go back and rewatch it just to refresh my memory, or maybe see it for the first time if I was like, oh, wow, I've never seen this one. But regardless, I'm going to watch it again because I really want to know what was so great about Crumb that both Siskel and Ebert put it Siskel's favorite movie and Ebert's third favorite film of 95. And Exotica sounds really good. I'm almost positive that I've seen that one, but I don't really remember it. I want to see it again just to see how good it was. So there we go. Those were the top 10 movies from our resident movie experts who were still doing Siskel and Ebert at the movies in 1995. So I've kind of tried to figure out exactly how I'm going to break this down. Because like I said, I don't want to go through this whole thing like I usually do, which is normally this part of the episode, I would just start in with the movie calendar. I would look from January through the end of December and just pick out each movie that I want to talk about. But those episodes really just ran on for a really long time. It was just me listing movies over and over again. And I want to try something different this time by just giving more of an overview of the whole year, more so than just looking at individual films. But it's impossible not to talk about how good the movie year was without giving some examples as to why the movie year was good or bad. And so I kind of broke this down into like the most popular / good movies of the year first. And as you can see, I'm going to put a list of it up here. And right at the top of the list, I put Toy Story. Now, Toy Story, as you can see, got a 100 review rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Its critic score is 100, and its audience score is 92, which is an incredibly great score. It's like one of the best scores I've ever run into on Rotten Tomatoes so far of the years that I've covered, all the movies that I've looked up their ratings. This has got to be one of the highest rated films I've ever seen between its critic score and its audience score. It's incredibly, incredibly high. And I don't know how much I want to get into each film. Like I said, I'm not going to get into Toy Story right now. Just everybody who's watching this or listening to this should know how great a film Toy Story was. A seminal film. It's like for my kids what Wizard of Oz was for me, or, you know what I mean, like, or something like that. That's how much it probably affected their movie watching life. It's one of those seminal films that just gets them into movies. You know what I mean? It's one of those. I'm sure that for a lot of kids, it was their first big, great movie that they've ever seen, and it's just an amazing film. But I'm gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna go into why that movie is so great, but that it is like the biggest standout film of '95, right? There are a lot of great films that came out this year, but I think that at the very top of the best of list of the movies from '95, I think should be Toy Story. Not my very favorite film of this year, but anyway, on the rest of this list, as you can see, I've listed them in their ranking order as far as like their highest Rotten Tomatoes rank. The better a Rotten Tomatoes score it got from the critics, the higher on the list it got, which is why Babe is the next movie on the list, and then Apollo 13. I guess if Toy Story isn't your thing, then Apollo 13's got to be your thing, right? There's so many people who love this film. I love this film. It's one of my favorite movies of this year also. And it's got to be the other like landmark film from '95 is Apollo 13. right? So what's the biggest standout films from '95? You got Apollo 13, you got Toy Story. Those have got to be the big two, all right? And then looking at the rest of this list, these scores, as you can see, they kind of run their way down. Braveheart's the movie that won Best Picture, so I guess that's another movie that kind of stands out from this year. I love Usual Suspects and Seven. Probably Seven is I'll give away my top 10 list as far as like my favorite movie of '95 was Seven. Right, two great films. And then if you like Clueless, that's another one that kind of jumps out off of this list. Casino from Scorsese, of course, is always going to stand out. Die Hard with a Vengeance for people who love the Die Hard series was from this year. Mallrats for people who love Kevin Smith. That one obviously jumps out. Jumanji for people who like that sort of thing. Bad Boys, the first Bad Boys was from this year, so people who love the Bad Boys series. Tommy Boy's another one that kind of jumps out. Billy Madison for people who love Adam Sandler jumps right off the page because that was the beginning of Adam Sandler's movie career. Batman Forever, of course, you can't overlook that one. Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, is a ridiculous sequel, but I think certainly has to jump off the page here too. And yeah, that's all I want to mention as far as like the best of movies from. Then there's some lesser known films from 1995. I don't know if I should call it Before Sunrise a lesser known film or not. I have it on the critics think these movies are great or they are good, but people don't really know of them list of movies. I'll put that up here. And of course, Before Sunrise is another 100% score. And again, this one has a 100/93 score. So I would take that back as far as Toy Story having one of the best scores ever. It does have, but so does Before Sunrise. That's an incredible Rotten Tomatoes score both way around. Has a 100 score from Rotten Tomatoes and the critics and a 93 from the audience members. That's an incredible two scores. Sense and Sensibility, although it got nominated for Best Picture, I don't know if I really can count that as obscure, but I don't think most people have ever seen that. At least most people from today might not have ever seen that one. And I'm trying to think what else really jumps off the page here as far as critical acclaim or obscure films. To Die For with Nicole Kidman. Mighty Aphrodite was from Woody Allen. Oh, Swimming with Sharks we're going to get into how great a film that one is. That's one of my favorite movies in this year too. Clockers is an obscure film, but it's a great film. And then Sabrina. Oh, I guess there's a remake of Sabrina that I think a lot of people might have forgotten about. Home for the Holidays is with Holly Hunter and Robert Downey Jr. Murder in the First is Kevin Bacon's tried an Oscar. Gary Oldman's also in that one. Basketball Diaries is early Leonardo DiCaprio. Miami Rhapsody. I was about to say Bohemian Rhapsody, and then I said Miami, so I said Miami and Rhapsody. Anyway, Miami Rhapsody with Sarah Jessica Parker. Hackers, people might know of, but again, I think it's still pretty obscure. And Desperado apparently has a really good score on Rotten Tomatoes too, but I barely remember that movie, so I put it under the critical obscure movies. So there's a lot here. Okay, there's a lot. If you look at all these films, that's a really good list of like really good films. That's over 100 movies. So if I was going through and like breaking these down and going through all the movies that were in the good section, I'd wind up talking, but not 100. Well, how do I say 100? That would be what, 83? 83 movies. That's a lot. That's a lot of movies to put into the good section. Okay, film debuts. People who made their film debut in 1995. We have Casey Affleck. Michael Bay directed his first movie in 1995 as Bad Boys. Drake Bell. My kids know who that is. Connie Britton and Ed Burns. Scott Caan. Hayden Christensen. Jennifer Coolidge. David Cross. Rosario Dawson. Peter Dinklage. Minnie Driver. Michael Clark Duncan. John Farley. Kevin Farley. They were both in Tommy Boy. I guess they were the writers of Tommy Boy, weren't they? Colin Farrell. Will Ferrell. Keira Knightley, Jared Leto, James McAvoy, Deborah Messing, Jay Moore, Amanda Peet, Ryan Phillippe, Giovanni Ribisi, Paul Rudd, Peter Sarsgaard, Chloe Sevigny, Michael Sheen, Ethan Suplee. He's a little bit obscure, but people who like Kevin Smith movies will know him from Mallrats, and I guess he was in My Name Is Earl too. Right? Charlize Theron's first movie was in '95. James Vanderbeek, and that's everybody. That's everybody you would know who made their film debuts in 1995. Okay, so let's talk about if the Oscars were 10. This is something I've done in the show pretty much since its beginning. That in up until about 2008, there were only 5 nominees for Best Picture every year. But ever since then, there's been more than 5 now. And after some trial and error, they finally settled on 10. And for a number of years now, the rule has been that there are 10 Best Picture nominees. So, if that were the rule back in 1995, what would the other 5 Best Picture nominees be if the Oscars were 10? Now, I try and do this as if I were an Oscar voter back in 1995. So, thinking about it like an Oscar voter in 1995, if the Oscars were 10, we had a possibility for 5 more nominees. What do I think else would have been nominated? Well, of course, I think 7. I know I'm a little biased when I think that, but I think I'm being objective enough that I can include 7 as one of the best picture nominees if the Oscars were 10. Now, one that didn't get nominated, which I was really surprised didn't get nominated, and I guess I was always walking around thinking that it did get nominated for Best Picture, even though I didn't love the movie, was Dead Man Walking. It had a lot of other Oscar nominations that year, but not for Best Picture. Also, another one that had a couple of Oscar nominations but didn't get nominated for Best Picture was Leaving Las Vegas. So that's definitely another one that could have been nominated for Best Picture if the Oscars were 10. Toy Story, right? I spent the whole episode talking about how great Toy Story is, and now thinking back at it, it's like the biggest standout movie of '95. It didn't get nominated for Best Picture. I know they didn't have Best Animated Feature as a category yet. They were soon to have it, but they didn't have it yet. But still, I mean, Beauty and the Beast got nominated for Best Picture in '92. This was as big as that movie, so I was really surprised that it didn't get nominated for Best Picture. And if the Oscars were 10, it definitely would have been nominated. All right, other ones that could have been nominated: Rob Roy, that had a couple of Oscar nominations also, but not for Best Picture. It's another one that's an easy standout. The American President, such a great movie, really does feel like an Oscar kind of movie. Certainly should have been nominated for Best Picture, and would have been, I think, if the Oscars were 10. Now it's already more than 5, but I have others that didn't make the list. There's so many movies that could have been nominated for Best Picture if the Oscar field were expanded, but even still, even 10 isn't enough, right? Because we also have Mr. Holland's Opus, which definitely felt like an Oscar kind of movie. Did not get nominated for Best Picture. Murder in the First, right, with Kevin Bacon. And Gary Oldman didn't get nominated for Best Picture. Nixon, right? Oliver Stone's big movie about Nixon didn't get nominated. Then we get a little bit. These movies had a little bit of less of a chance of getting nominated for Best Picture, but we also had Martin Scorsese's Casino. We had Michael Mann's Heat, right? We had Get Shorty, and maybe even 12 Monkeys. So these were all movies that could have been nominated for Best Picture that none of them got nominated. So there were even way more than 5 more nominees that could have been nominated for Best Picture, but none of these movies got it. So let me narrow it down to just 5. If I had to narrow it down to just 5 out of the ones I just said, I guess it was the first 5 I just mentioned, right? 7, Dead Man Walking, Leaving Las Vegas, Toy Story, and I want to say The American President, but I don't know. I'm trying to put myself into the mind of a 1995 voter. Would they have thought Rob Roy was more prestigious than American President? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm going to go with 7, Dead Man Walking, Leaving Las Vegas, Toy Story, and The American President. That's a great 5 nominees for Best Picture. Those could have, I know the 5 movies that did get nominated were pretty good, but even these 5, if these were just the 5, the main 5, that would have been fine. That would have been a really impressive list of 5 movies nominated for Best Picture. So anyway, those were all kind of Oscar caliber Oscar type of movies that if any of them had got nominated for Best Picture, wouldn't have been a huge surprise. As for what did get nominated and did win at the Oscars, all right, let's start with Best Picture. That went to Braveheart. Also nominated for Best Picture was Apollo 13, a movie called The Postman or Tu Postino because it was, I guess it was in Italian. Babe and Sense and Sensibility. I was surprised about Babe when it first happened. It's a smaller kind of movie, and Hume Cronin and that talking pig, whatever. It's not. Well, is it animated or I don't remember. Computer animated or whatever. But anyway, it's a very cute movie. I was still surprised that it got nominated for Best Picture. I guess it was really kind of pulling on people's heartstrings sort of film. But anyway, do I still think that Braveheart should have won Best Picture? Absolutely, obviously not. I guess in the moment, it really did. It was a sweeping war epic. It was a period piece, and everything in it was a little bit not unusual, but certainly was otherworldly. Like it transported us to another world and another time. And it was a very good movie. It is a very good movie. It's a great action movie too. And when action movies can like elevate themselves to Oscar caliber, they definitely have a better chance of winning Best Picture. Also, we liked at this moment in time, the Oscars loved giving movies to pieces of whatever movies that were set in the past. The farther in the past, the better, right? They didn't really tend to give Oscars to contemporary movies as much as they did movies from the past. So I understood it, but Apollo 13 is clearly a better film in every way. And I don't know why they didn't give it Best Picture. I guess because we already knew the outcome of the movie before we saw the movie, because it was part of our recent history. It's an historical movie, but it was, like I mentioned earlier, it kind of stands in the place of history. But it happened so close by. It was not so long ago to the point where we knew what was going to happen before we got to the ending. So maybe, I don't know. There's really no other reason for that not to win Best Picture. One other reason, I guess, was because Forrest Gump had just won the previous year, and so they didn't want to give back-to-back Tom Hanks movies Best Picture, which isn't a great reason not to give the movie Best Picture. Certainly not one to give it to Braveheart instead. But I guess, like, in the moment, I think people were still very much moved by the action and drama of Braveheart more than Apollo 13. Okay, it's fine. But looking back at it, I certainly think that Apollo 13 has lasted better, has certainly stood the test of time a little bit better, certainly because people still don't really like Mel Gibson as much as they did back in 1995. Okay, so what else won and got nominated at the Oscars? I mentioned all the movies that I mentioned. If the Oscars were 10, those were movies that also should have been nominated for Best Picture. Any one of those movies that I listed earlier, all of them got snubbed for a Best Picture, at least for a nomination anyway. And of course, if I had my choice, I would have picked 7 to win Best Picture, but a movie that dark was never going to win Best Picture. So of the ones that really had a chance of winning, I would have picked Apollo 13. Much the same as most people did. All right, then we go to Best Director. That went to Mel Gibson for Braveheart, of course. Chris Noonan also got nominated for Babe. Tim Robbins got nominated for Dead Man Walking, even though his movie didn't get nominated for Best Picture, which was weird. Michael Figgis got nominated for Leaving Las Vegas, even though his movie didn't get nominated for Best Picture. So there were 2 directors nominated for movies that didn't get nominated for Best Picture. Then we had Michael Radford for Tu Postino, and those were those are the people who got nominated for Best Director, which means that Sense and Sensibility, and Apollo 13 get nominated for Best Director. Right? How did Ron Howard not get nominated for Apollo 13? Right? We're all looking back at this movie this many years later, thinking that that's the movie that definitely should have won Best Picture, and its director didn't even get nominated for Best Director. Like, Ron Howard is not only a director, he's like a celebrity director, right? I mean, he's not as much a celebrity as Spielberg or people like Scorsese or anything, but he was a child actor turned director, and so he's very famous. Very unusual that somebody with his level of clout wouldn't have at least been nominated for Best Director. Very weird. Same is true of Rob Reiner for The American President. Also, definitely could have been nominated for Best Director. Martin Scorsese could have got nominated for Casino. Michael Mann could have got nominated for Heat. David Fincher should have been nominated for Seven. Terry Gilliam should have been nominated for 12 Monkeys, and Spike Lee could have got nominated for Clockers. All these people are celebrity directors. None of them got nominated, and they all deserved it. These were all quality films with great directing, and they all should have been nominated. Any of them could have been and or should have been nominated for Best Director instead. And again, I would have given Best Director to Ron Howard does go on to win Best Director, but for A Beautiful Mind, but still should have also been nominated and won for Apollo 13. Like I said, I like every single director on the could have been nominated list more than the directors that did get nominated. For Best Actor went to Nicolas Cage for Leaving Las Vegas. Also nominated was Richard Dreyfuss for Mr. Holland's Opus, Anthony Hopkins for Nixon, Sean Penn for Dead Man Walking, and Massimo Troisi for Tu Postino, and he died before he for the Oscars, so it was posthumous. Even still, I love Nicolas Cage in Leaving Las Vegas. I don't think I would take his Oscar away. I certainly don't think I wouldn't have given it to anybody else. Everybody else in this category, except for Massimo Troisi, deserved their nomination. I'm glad that everybody else got nominated for their parts. However, also could have been nominated for Best Actor was Tom Hanks for Apollo 13. I talked about that earlier, about how underrated his performance actually is in this movie. But he had been nominated and won the previous 2 years, so that would have been very unusual. I don't think anybody's ever done that. Won 2 years in a row and then got nominated the third year. I'll have to go back and check, but I don't think that ever happened. It's only happened a few times anybody ever won for back-to-back years. But I'll look it up, see if any of those people who also did it got nominated the third year. I'm pretty sure that never happened. Kevin Bacon could have got nominated for Murder in the First. Michael Douglas could have got nominated for American President. Robert De Niro and or Al Pacino could have got nominated for Heat. Brad Pitt or Morgan Freeman could have got nominated for Seven. And Bruce Willis could have got nominated for 12 Monkeys, right? I don't think Bruce Willis has ever been nominated for an Oscar. No, I'm pretty sure he hasn't. So that would have been very interesting if that had happened. But, like I said, none of that ever happened. If I had to give out the Oscar again, I think I'd still give it to Nicolas Cage. I think he deserved it more than everybody else. For Best Lead Actress, the winner was Susan Sarandon for Dead Man Walking. Also nominated was Elizabeth Shue for Leaving Las Vegas, Sharon Stone for Casino, Meryl Streep for Bridges of Madison County, which I guess is another movie that I guess if you really want to stretch it, could have been also been nominated for Best Picture. And Emma Thompson got nominated for Sense and Sensibility. Also could have got nominated was Nicole Kidman for To Die For, Jennifer Jason Leigh for a movie called Georgia, Kathy Bates for Dolores Claiborne, and maybe even Michelle Pfeiffer for Dangerous Minds, which is another one. I guess if I'm thinking like an Oscar voter from 95, maybe there would have been some sentiment for Dangerous Minds, but I doubt it. It really wasn't an Oscar caliber kind of film. However, do I think that Susan Sarandon still deserves her Oscar? I mean, she's never won an Oscar, so I guess so. But that's really the only reason. I didn't really particularly care for her that much in this movie. But, okay. If I had to give it to somebody else, I don't know. Would I give it to Elizabeth Shue instead? Probably. I mean, Nicole Kidman wasn't even nominated for To Die For, but I think that she was better than everybody. Oh, no, I know. Again, I would have given it to Kathy Bates for Dolores Claiborne and wasn't even nominated. So that's what I would have given Best Actress to. Best Supporting Actor went to Kevin Spacey for The Usual Suspects. Right, big year. I've been mentioning him a lot. It's been a big year for him. Also nominated was James Cromwell for Babe, a performance I didn't understand at first, but why it would ever be nominated for Best anything. But okay, it's grown on me. I think it's better than I originally thought. It was very, very silent performance. And again, I would have been fine if he didn't get nominated. Ed Harris for Apollo 13, Brad Pitt for 12 Monkeys, and Tim Roth for Rob Roy. And so who would I have picked? I think after all these years, I think I would have picked Kevin Spacey still for Usual Suspects. Although I think Brad Pitt was incredible in 12 Monkeys. And I also thought Ed Harris was incredible in Apollo 13. So I would have been fine with any of those guys winning Best Supporting Actor. Also could have got nominated for Best Supporting Actor was Michael J. Fox for The American President. Maybe the best, most Oscar caliber of all the performances he's ever given in his career. Gary Oldman gave a great supporting actor performance in Murder in the First. Delroy Lindo was great as supporting actor in Get Shorty. Also, I guess, what's the other one? Um, Gene Hackman, maybe, for Get Shorty, or maybe even Danny DeVito. And then Robert Downey Jr. for Home for the Holidays. All were performances that I guess could have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor if you wanted to go that way. Best Supporting Actress went to Mia Sorvino for Mighty Aphrodite, and also could have got nominated was Joan Allen for Nixon. I'm sorry, not could have, actually was also nominated was Joan Allen for Nixon. Catherine Quinlan for Apollo 13. I think I've talked about her before. That's the only thing I didn't like about Apollo 13 was Kathleen Quinlan's performance. I thought she was terrible. Maybe that's the reason the movie didn't win Best Picture, because people didn't like her performance. She brought the movie down, right? She's the weak link in that film. Mare Whittingham for Georgia. She was the main reason I think that I sought out and watched that movie, Georgia, because she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and I wanted to see what the big deal was. She was great, but she wasn't as good as Jennifer Jason Leigh, who actually should have been nominated for Best Actress. Also did get nominated for Best Supporting Actress was Kate Winslet for Sense and Sensibility, and I think that's her first Oscar nomination. Also could have got nominated for Best Supporting Actress was Annette Bening for The American President, with Paltrow for Seven, very small part, but maybe with her head in the box, maybe she could have got nominated. Judy what is it? Judy Parfitt was Kathy Bates's boss in Dolores Claiborne, and I thought she was great, and I really thought she could have got nominated. Glenn Headley also could have got nominated for Mr. Holland's Opus, and I think she was really trying for a supporting actress. If you look at her performance, she's definitely really going for it in that movie. So, do I still think that Mia Sorvino should have been? No, I don't think that Mia Sorvino should have won. I guess I would have given it to who would I would have given it to? Joan Allen, probably, for Nixon. I don't even think Joan Allen's ever won an Oscar, and this was a great performance by her. So I definitely would have rather her gotten the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. In the screenplay categories, it was just as much about who wasn't nominated as opposed to who was nominated. I guess this is true of a lot of the nominees in 1995. So, nominated for Best Screenplay in 1995, well, The Usual Suspects won Best Original Screenplay, which it absolutely deserved. That was actually a really good nominee and win. But also nominated in Best Original Screenplay was Braveheart, Mighty Aphrodite, Nixon, and Toy Story, which are all also good nominees. Okay? And again, I would not take Usual Suspects Oscar away from it. I understand it's winning in that category, and it's fine. I think it's great. But there are a lot of other screenplays that deserve to also be nominated. But here's the thing about screenplays is that without doing a lot more research, I can't go through all the different ones that could have been nominated and tell you which ones of these are original screenplays and which ones are adapted screenplays. So I'm just going to do both categories first, and then I'll tell you the list of movies that probably should have been also nominated for Best Screenplay and weren't. Okay, but let's keep Usual Suspects. I'm fine with that winning Best Original Screenplay in 95. Great screenplay, loved it. And then Best Screenplay for Adapted Screenplay. Now, the way they titled these in 95, or whatever, for the 95 awards, is they called it Best Writing. And then in parentheses, it says Screenplay written directly for the screen. And then for Adapted, it says Best Writing Screenplay based on material previously produced or published. It just, you know what I mean? Just make it simpler. One's original screenplay and one's adapted screenplay. It means exactly the same thing. But whatever. Anyway, in the category of Best Writing, quote, screenplay based on material previously produced or published, the winner was Sense and Sensibility. Emma Thompson actually did win an Oscar. So she has won an Oscar in her life, but it was for writing, not for acting. Because she adapted the Jane Austen novel for Sense and Sensibility. Anyway, also nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay is what I'm going to call it, is Apollo 13, Babe, Leaving Las Vegas, and Tupostino for The Postman. So, those were who were. That's who was nominated. I think first of all, of these movies that were nominated in this category, I think Apollo 13 again was the better one. But I say that of every category that Apollo 13 was nominated in. Let's see. So let's see. What else could have been nominated for best screenplay, whether it be original or adapted? We have The American President, right? Aaron Sorkin was not nominated for American. You got to be kidding me. Was not nominated for an Oscar for, not even nominated for The American President. Ridiculous. Seven was not nominated for best original. I'm guessing. I'm guessing that would have been original screenplay. I'm guessing. 12 Monkeys, great screenplay. Heat, To Die For, all great screenplays. Get Shorty, I think it was an Elmore Leonard. I think that was an Elmore Leonard book first. I'll look it up, but I'm pretty sure that, or at least it feels like something he would write. Dolores Claiborne, right? Stephen King, not nominated. And Casino, although King wasn't always nominated, his movies weren't always nominated, even for screenplay awards. And Scorsese's screenplays are given even less respect for him as a director, right? For as little respect as he was getting at this point in his career, even in '95, as like an award caliber director, his screenplays were given even less respect. So he was very rarely even nominated for best screenplays for any of his incredible films. Anyway, these are all movies that could have been nominated in the screenplay categories. All of them were, and I think each one of these screenplays I listed were just as good, if not better, than some of the screenplays that were nominated for the screenplay Oscars. What else? What else won at the Oscars? Then we have Best Foreign Language Film. Best Foreign Language Film went to a movie called Antonina's Line. This was the first time I'd ever seen a movie that was nominated for Best Picture that I could have sworn was a foreign language film. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't a foreign language film. Tupustina was in English? I have to look that up. I could have sworn that was a foreign language film. It wasn't even nominated in this category for Best Foreign Language Film. That's so weird. That's so weird. I'll look that up. That would be the first time ever that a foreign language film got nominated for Best Picture overall, but didn't even get nominated for Best Foreign Language Film. That must have been in English, but I can't understand that. I could have sworn that was a foreign language film, but I'll look it up to make sure. Anyway, Best Documentary Feature was Anne Frank Remembered, and that's a very famous documentary. So absolutely no way that anything else would have won in this category. Though there was the Hank Aaron documentary of Chasing the Dream, where he chased and beat Babe Ruth's all-time home run record. That documentary is from this year, so that one was notable. I'm trying to look at any of the other notable so Tupostino, like I said before, not only was it, I'm pretty sure it was a foreign language film, but maybe it wasn't. It won Best Music. Again, it wasn't called Best Score. Instead, it was called Best Music. So again, that's so weird. So such a weird title to have just call it Best Score, right? But whatever. Tupostino won Best Score. Whatever. It beat out James Horner for Apollo 13. And James Horner was also nominated for Braveheart. So he had 2 nominations. Lost for both. Maybe they split their vote. Who knows? Maybe they split his vote in 2 because he had 2 movies nominated for Best Score for the movie that was 1995. John Williams, of course, gets another nomination. This one for Nixon. Great score, by the way, but no better than any of the other ones he ever won for. So I can't say this was the one he actually had to have. And then a man named Patrick Doyle got nominated for Sense and Sensibility. Also could have been nominated for Best Original Screenplay. There were 2. I had 2 other ones. Oh, Mark Shyman for The American President again, and Howard Shore for Seven also could have got nominated. Those were both great scores, and neither of them were even nominated for Best Original Score. Oh, so I guess that's the reason why they didn't call it Best Score. They said Best Music for Original Music or Comedy Score. Again, why? Why do we have 2 score categories? It's not the Golden Globes. Anyway, Pocahontas won Best Score for that. Oh, so American President did get nominated for that. So all right, so I take it back. Mark Shyman did get nominated for Best Original Score, Best Score, but only for Best Comedy Score. Sabrina, John Williams again got nominated for Sabrina, so he got 2 nominations. One for the drama side and one for the comedy side. And Thomas Newman, who got nominated many times in his career, got nominated for a movie called Unstrung Heroes. Pocahontas won for Best Song in a Movie for Colors of the Wind. Bruce Springsteen got nominated for Dead Man Walking from Dead Man Walking. Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman from Don Juan DeMarco? That was a song by Bryan Adams. And Moonlight from the movie Sabrina. That was written by John Williams. So he also got a song nomination. But the song that should have won Best Song from a movie from 1995 is You Got a Friend in Me from Randy Newman. Got nominated many times, but I don't even think up to this point had ever won an Oscar. I'm pretty sure Randy Newman might not have ever won an Oscar. He's been nominated as many times as Susan Lucci has been nominated for for a daytime Emmy. But yes, You Got a Friend in Me should have won Best Original Song. So that was another one the Oscars got wrong. Best Sound Effects Editing went to Braveheart over Batman Forever and Crimson Tide. I guess the only other thing I would nominate here would either be 12 Monkeys or Seven. Best Sound went to Apollo 13. So Apollo 13 did win an Oscar. It definitely deserved this one. Batman Forever got nominated again for this category. It's 2 nominations for Batman Forever. For however good or bad you may think that movie is, it got nominated for 2 Oscars. Braveheart also got nominated in this category, and Crimson Tide also got nominated in this category, and so did Waterworld. For as terrible as a movie that people Waterworld think it is, it also got an Oscar nomination. So, a movie called Restoration won for Best Art Direction. I'll talk about that in the next episode about all the movies that came out this year. Apollo 13 got nominated for Best Art Direction. Babe also, and A Little Princess, and Richard III all got nominated for Best Art Direction. I can't say that anything else should have won. I think I liked Restoration. It's fine. Could have either gone to Babe or Apollo 13. I would have had no problem with that. I'm not really a big art direction snob. I don't care. Cinematography went to Braveheart. I guess if you're going to give one to Braveheart, I guess that's fine. Sense and Sensibility could have won it just as easily. Also was nominated. Batman Forever, I don't know why that was nominated in this category. Little Princess was nominated also. And a movie called Shanghai Triad. I've never heard of that movie. It's fine. Fine, I'll leave that one alone. Best cinematography could go to Braveheart. Best makeup went to Braveheart. Again, this is weird. My Family, Mi Familia got nominated in this category also, and Roommates got nominated for best makeup. I guess it wasn't a strong makeup year. Fine, Braveheart could win it. I mean, a lot of guys running around with painted faces in Braveheart, so fine, we'll give it to Braveheart. Best costume design went to Restoration. So Restoration won 2 Oscars. Best art direction and best costume design. This is not really a great film. It's good, but it's not great. But fine, wants to give it. All right, it's got to. We got to give a period piece like all these different costume, indoor art direction designs. It's fine. Fine. I don't care. Also nominated for best costume design was 12 Monkeys and Braveheart again, and Richard III and Sense and Sensibility. I'm surprised Sense and Sensibility didn't win this category. This is probably the category it would have most likely won. I bet it was a snub. I bet it was like a shock, like an upset that it didn't win this category. So, but again, I'm not really hung up on those awards. Best film editing went to Apollo 13. Definitely deserved it over Babe and Braveheart and Crimson Tide. And Seven finally gets a nomination. Right? Best film editing was absolutely deserved. I think it probably was even better than anything else in this category. I don't know. Not really sure why Babe was nominated. I'm sure if I looked hard enough, I could find something to replace Babe with. But fine, I'll leave it. It didn't win. Best visual effects went to Babe. Over Apollo 13, and that's so weird. Of the 2 movies, I would definitely have given it to Apollo 13 instead. But whatever, you want to give it Oscar to Babe, you could give it to me, give it best visual effects. So not a great Oscars year is my point. I have like an alternate for almost every single category. So I wasn't particularly happy for any of the movies, any of the winners. I'm almost against every single, not everything, but almost against every single thing that won in this category. I would have picked something else. So this was not a satisfying Oscar result either. Okay, so let's go to Actor and Actress of the Year for 95. Hang on, let me bring this up real quick. All right, so for Actor and Actress, let's do Actor first, I guess. Actor is actually the easiest. We had a lot of people who were in multiple movies in 1995. We'll start with, who are we going to start with here? Start with William H. Macy, was in Mr. Holland's Opus, Evolver, Roommates, Murder in the First, and Above Suspicion. 2, 3, 4, that's 5.
Sean Connery was in Just Cause and First Night. Robin Williams was in Jumanji and 9 Months. Gene Hackman was in The Quick and the Dead, Crimson Tide, and Get Shorty. Those were three really good ones. He's up there. Well, I'm sorry, The Quick and the Dead wasn't a great movie, but those were three notable performances from him. Brad Pitt was in Seven and 12 Monkeys, two really good performances from him. Hugh Grant was in 9 Months, Sense and Sensibility, An Awfully Big Adventure, Restoration, Train to Venice, and An Englishman Who Went Up a Hill and Came Down a Mountain. That's six movies in the same year for Hugh Grant. So he was definitely riding high off of his full ratings in a funeral year from 94, and he made the most of it in 95. I think he might be the one who has the most. That's six. I think he may be the busiest actor of 95. Michael Rappaport was in Mighty Aphrodite, Higher Learning, Basketball Diaries, and Kiss of Death. Michael Imperioli was in Basketball Diaries, Bad Boys, Sweet Nothing, and Clockers. That's four. Kevin Bacon was in Murder in the First, Apollo 13. He was the voice actor in Balto. Samuel L. Jackson was in Kiss of Death and Die Hard and Vengeance, Fluke, and Losing Isaiah. Leonardo DiCaprio was in The Basketball Diaries, The Quick and the Dead, and a movie called Total Eclipse. Who's next? Chris O'Donnell was in Batman Forever, Circle of Friends, and Mad Love. Denzel Washington was in Devil in a Blue Dress, Crimson Tide, and Virtuosity. Morgan Freeman was in Seven and An Outbreak. Ice Cube was in Friday, Higher Learning, Tank Girl, Glass Shield, Johnny Mnemonic, and Murder Was the Case. That's six also. So he was also in six. So there's a tie. Then we get to the top three. I think that Nicolas Cage was in Leaving Las Vegas and Kiss of Death. Robert De Niro was in Heat, Casino, and a movie called 101 Nights. But the actor of the year for 1995, without question, goes to Kevin Spacey. I'm sorry for people who still consider Kevin Spacey canceled, but he is the actor of the year in 1995. In 95, he was in Usual Suspects, Seven, Outbreak, and Swimming with Sharks. Three great performances. Well, not either great movies or whatever. Either big movies, great movies, or great performances. Well, he's one of those three for all those four movies. So he definitely wins Actor of the Year for 1995. Actress of the Year is easier because we don't have as many candidates. We have Jennifer Jason Leigh was in Dolores Claiborne in Georgia. Nicole Kidman was in To Die For and Batman Forever. Gwyneth Paltrow was in Seven, Moonlight and Valentino, and Jefferson in Paris. Holly Hunter was in Copycat, Home for Holidays, and The Way West. Julianne Moore was in 9 Months, Assassins, Roommates, and a movie called Safe. So that makes her the busiest actress of 5. But the actress of the year for 1995, in my opinion, is Alicia Silverstone. Really broke out this year. She was in Clueless, Hideaway, True Crime, The Babysitter, and New World. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's also like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, 5 movies in the same year. So by sheer volume and Clueless being as big a breakout movie for her, put those two things together, and that makes her the actress of the year for 1995. Okay, so as far as where do I put this year? Where do I put this year as far as its ranking among all of the other years? Right, so I'm going to have to go through the scorecard. Here's the movie year that was a scorecard. I'll bring this up again right now. And 1995, like I said, it has an incredible, its scores are incredible. Right, its scores are way better than I thought they were going to be. And there are a lot of movies that I'm going to talk about in the next episode, another half of this episode, when I break them down as far as why all these movies are as good as they are. But they really are very good. And so just judging by that, it's got to be considered one of the best. So I don't think it's better than 93. But do I think it's better than... I don't think it's better than 84. Yeah, it's got to be lower than 84 also. But so 93, 84... Although that's definitely not in the top two, right? And then what did I say was next? I think this was 90. 95. I said '89 was third. So yeah, so I don't think it cracks the top three, but it's better than '87. So I will make it fourth. All right, I'm gonna officially rank 1994. No, sorry, again, 1995. I'm gonna rank 1995 as the fourth best movie year that I've ever covered, behind 93, 84, 89, and then 1995. I mean, for all my misgivings about this episode, about this year, and how much I didn't like it in the past, just over time, just really carried the weight of how many movies there are in this year and how many of them were of quality or certainly definitely rewatchable. I have to give it up for 95 and give it a top four ranking. So now the new top five are 93, 84, 1989, 1995, and then 1987. So 1994 drops out of the top five. As far as how I feel about it personally, I still don't like it as much as 89 or 94 or 98 or 93. So I'm going to move it down to, no, I decide, do I like it better than 86? So here we go. In real time, I'm trying to figure out whether, do I like 1995 better than I like the movie year that was 1996? Probably not. Probably not. Okay, so I'll make it sixth. All right, I'll make it sixth in front of 87. So it's 89, 94, 98, 93, 86 for me personally, and then sixth will be 1995. There we go. That's where I think it ranks as far as my favorite movie years of all time. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so a couple of quick corrections for this first part of the movie that was 1995. When I mentioned that this movie year's all-star average was second ranked among all the movie years that I've talked about so far, what I meant to say was that its audience average for the all-star average, for his all-star movies, was second among all of the movies years that I've talked about so far. But in fact, I think I implied anyway that its critics average was second best. Its critics average was like eighth, so it was like towards the bottom half. It wasn't even one of the better critics average among its all-star movies. All right, so that was one thing. John Farrelly and Kevin Farrelly were both in Tommy Boy, and they had made their film debuts in that movie. However, they were just like whatever. They were like character actors. They were They weren't extras, but they barely were in that movie. It's not like those two guys are big stars either. And I had made the mistake of thinking that they were the Farrelly brothers, like who were the writer directors of a lot of slapstick comedies and stuff like that. That maybe they were in it, or maybe they had even directed this movie and they didn't. Okay, so they're just actors. They're just actors, and so I had made that mistake, and I wanted to correct that. I said The Beauty and the Beast was nominated for Best Picture in 1992. In fact, it was the movie came out in 1991, so I got that wrong. But the big thing was that I talked about Rob Reiner not getting nominated for The American President when I was talking about directors who could have been nominated for Best Director in 1995. But when I recorded the episode, Rob Reiner had not died yet. He died a very tragic death very recently. But at the time that I recorded this episode, that had not happened yet. I'm going to address Rob Reiner's career and, of course, The American President in detail, and his life and his death in part 2 of this episode. I'm not going to do it in this episode. However, just so you know that just because I mentioned him and then I didn't address his death, it's only because he hadn't died at the time that I recorded talking about him. All right. So in talking about actors who had won back-to-back Oscars, did they ever get nominated the third year after that? And the answer to that question is no. Tom Hanks was won in 93 and 94, but then did not get nominated in 95, is the reason that I even asked the question. So I looked back at the other people who had done this. Louise Rayner, she had won back-to-back years, but those were the only 2 years she was even nominated. She wasn't never nominated. She didn't get nominated third year. She never got nominated any other year either. So those were the only 2 Oscar nominations she ever got. Jason Robards won in 76 and 77, but then didn't get nominated again until 1980. That didn't happen. Katharine Hepburn won in 67 and 68, but then did not get nominated again in 69. She did get nominated again until 1980 also. Spencer Tracy did win back-to-back years. He won in 1937 and 1938. He did not get nominated in 39. However, he did get nominated in 1936. So I actually did ask the question backwards. So somebody who won back-to-back Oscars did get a third straight nomination. It was just the year prior to the two wins, not the year after. All right. Same is true of John Ford, who won Best Director in 1940 and 1941, and then did not get nominated in 42. However, he did get nominated in 1939. All right, and Joseph Mankiewicz did win Best Director in 1949 and 50, but then did not get nominated again for Best Director until 1954. So I think that's everybody. I think that's everybody who had ever won back-to-back Oscars, and they're the year afterwards. So no, the answer is no. They never got nominated the following year. However, two of them did get nominated the year prior to the two wins. So there you go. That's the answer to that question. I was like 98% sure, but I just went back and checked, and Bruce Willis was never nominated for an Oscar. So I was almost positive, but just wanted to make sure. So I did check, and he didn't. And Joan Allen never won an Oscar. So that's I was almost positive about that. Also, just wanted to make sure, and I did. I was also almost positive that Elmore Leonard was the one who wrote the novel Get Shorty, and he did. He also adapted the screenplay. Why did Tu Postino not get nominated for Best Foreign Language Film, even though it got nominated for Best Picture? The reason was because Italy is in charge of who gets nominated, what their submission is for Best Picture, Best Foreign Language Film. Sorry, not Best Picture. And they didn't ask for Tu Postino to be considered for Best Foreign Language Film. I'm sure that if they did, it would have. But instead, they submitted a movie called Star Maker as their foreign language film, as their contender for Best Foreign Language Film. So that's why Star Maker got nominated from Italy instead of Tu Postino, because Italy didn't even submit it for a possible nomination for Best Foreign Language Film. That was the reason. And yes, indeed, Tu Postino is the only movie ever to get nominated for Best Picture, even though it is a foreign language film, and then not get nominated. As a matter of fact, every other foreign language film that was ever nominated for Best Picture won for Best Foreign Language Film, except Tu Postino. And a couple other ones but they were also nominated against another foreign language film. That's the only reason they didn't win. Another foreign language film that also got nominated for Best Picture. That's the only reason that ever happened. That there was two movies that were both foreign language films and nominated for Best Picture. One of them had to win Best Foreign Language Films. Otherwise, if there was just one of the Best Picture nominees in the foreign language category, that movie so far is undefeated, right? Except for Tu Postino, which didn't even get nominated for Best Foreign Language Film because Italy did not submit it as their contender for that category, right? And the only other thing that I wanted to mention was that Randy Newman did win 2 Oscars. I did mention that he had been nominated a bunch of times. I wasn't sure if he had ever won, and he had won twice. He won in 2001 for Best Song from Monsters, Inc., and he won in 2010 for Best Song from Toy Story 3. So those were all of my corrections. So, as I leave this episode and start working on part 2 of this episode, which will air in 2026, however, I'm going to record it in 2025, so it'll still count as doing it in 2025. I want you to hear the new updated version of the song. Of course, you actually have heard it so far. You've heard a little bit of it as the intro to this episode. The theme music to this podcast has been updated. It's got an upgrade thanks to AI. Right, as a program, I just put in my little 16-second theme music to this episode into an AI program, and they generated the new version of this song for this music for the podcast. And so you only got to hear about 16 seconds of it at the beginning of this episode, but I'm going to outro. The outro of this episode is going to be the entirety of that song. When I got back AI's version of my theme music, I just thought it was one of the greatest pieces of music I'd ever heard in my entire life, and I still think that it is. I know I'm being biased when I say that. However, I love it. I just want to have it on an episode in its entirety, just the once. And then from now on, afterwards, you're just going to get to hear a part of the song, but it'll be a much better, upgraded version of the theme music to this podcast, okay? So as I leave you, please enjoy the new AI upgraded version of the theme music to the movie year that was, and I will be back with part 2 of the movie year that was 1995. Okay? Thanks.